But my name's Alexa. I'm the Senior Vice President of the Delta Iota chapter. And tonight we have a super awesome professional speaker. So I have a little introduction that I'm going to read about him, and then I'm going to give him host, and he's going to take it away. So I will start. Tonight, I would like to introduce to you our speaker, Eddie Stephens. Brother Stephens was initiated at the Beta Omega chapter in our region at the University of Miami and attended law school at Stetson Law. Mr. Stephens is a board-certified marital and family attorney in West Palm Beach, tasked to solve complex financial and emotional problems at his firm. Stephens has been responsible for dividing billions of dollars in assets and liabilities over his 21-year career. He is one of 7 owners in the firm with 20 attorneys and 70 employees, managing a budget of over $15 million. With his background on career, Mr. Stephens is also a well-known publicist on these topics. Through the years, Mr. Stephens has been recognized for his outstanding service and dedication to his profession and the community, which I wanted to highlight below. In 2017, he was the recipient of the Alberto Romero Jr. Making a Difference Award. This award is given by the Florida Bar to the one family law attorney who has made a difference for Florida's children and families through endless service to the disadvantaged and underserved members of our community. In 2018, Mr. Stephens was the recipient of Leadership Palm Beach County's Leadership Excellence Award that recognizes alumni who have made significant contributions to improving their community. In 2019, Mr. Stephens was the recipient of the Harriet Goldstein Award for outstanding contributions to the most challenged families and children in Palm Beach County. Mr. Stephens' work doesn't stop in the Palm Beach area. He also is heavily involved in Delta Sigma Pi. He has donated over $50,000 to the fraternity and was recognized for hitting the 50K mark at Grand Chapter Congress in Atlanta in 2019. Mr. Stephens was also the Palm Beach County Alumni Chapter President for the fraternity, as well as the Leadership Foundation Trustee. Mr. Stephens has also been awarded his Silver Helmet for 25 years of service to the fraternity. From 1995 to 1997, Mr. Stephens served on the board of directors, making immeasurable changes to our Leadership Foundation scholarships and fellowship opportunities. Mr. Stephens was also a regional director, now known as regional vice president in our region. And without further ado, I would like to introduce to you Brother Eddie Stephens tonight to our chapter. Welcome, Brother Eddie. We are so excited to have you here tonight.
Hey, everybody. How are you doing? We got some thumbs up. Just out of curiosity, if you are a brother, let me see you raise your hand. If you're currently a brother, that's a lot of you. How about perspectives? Do we have any perspectives in the room? 1, 2, 3. Keep your hands up because there's so many screens to look. 4, 5. What a turnout. 6. Cool. Well, congratulations, because Delta Sigma Pi is an unbelievable organization. I'm 49 years old, and I've been a member of the fraternity for 30 years, and I would not be nearly as successful as I am today had it not been for these experiences. So if you're currently a brother, make the most of it. If you are checking out what Delta Sigma Pi is about, jump right in. It's so much more than just a line on your resume. And I'll give you some examples of that as we go forward. But I'm an attorney now. I've been an attorney for 25 years, and I have made myself an expert in my field. If you Google me, I actually, my picture kind of comes up in the Google search. It's kind of fun. But I would not be where I am had it not been for the experiences I got in Delta Sig. And I'm not talking just about being a collegiate and being a chapter. I was a chapter president for 2 terms. I was VPPE for 3 terms. And that was invaluable lessons, because basically you get to run a business without the consequences of running a business. I mean, if you look at Delta Sigma Pi, the chapters or the pledge program, it has all the elements of running a successful business. So instead of reading about this stuff in books, you actually kind of get to put it in practice. And that is an experience that most people who graduate don't have. So if you really get into this experience and you have successes and failures are really important, because you're going to have more failures in life than than successes, but every failure is really a lesson. And those failures help you evolve. And if you can have those experiences in a safe place, like in college, where you're not going to get fired from a job and have those harsh consequences, and you learn these things now, you're going to have such a competitive advantage over the folks that are just reading books and going to class. So all of my brothers, I applaud you, and all of you perspectives, I think you should give this serious consideration. I have also made lifelong friends. Like I've known Melissa here for many years at this point, since she was a young collegian. And many of my best friends are Deltasigs, but they're not Deltasigs from my chapter. They're from around the country, because once this pandemic is over, you'll see that Delta Sigma Pi is a very strong national organization. And we have these events that not only are networking, but you learn and you have the opportunity to speak. And I believe that if you're going to be a professional and you really want to, do what you do as a vocation, be the best of it, you have to teach it. You have to give service to your profession. I believe in giving service to God, to your profession, to your community, to your family. Not necessarily in that order, but I think those are all of our responsibilities. So Delta Sigma Pi was an incredible launching point for me, and just gave me so many tools and so many friends and so many resources. And you will be amazed that if you put Delta Sigma Pi on your resume, when you're out there interviewing, how many people are going to ask you about it. And if you really don't have much to say about it because you didn't participate in the experience, they're going to know that. Delta Sigma Pi is exactly what you make it, whatever that is. It could be an incredible experience, or it could just be a line on your resume, depending on what your goals are. So I have a really fun and interesting topic tonight. I say that kind of sarcastically because it's horrible. It's risk management. It's important, but it's kind of a dry topic. Hearing it for me is kind of different because I'm an attorney, and when you graduate, you're going to have assets, and you're going to do things, hopefully, to create even more assets. And when you have stuff and you mess up in life, that stuff can be taken away from you. So it's kind of important to understand certain responsibilities that you have to other people around you. And we're going to kind of drill down and talk about that. But first things first, let's jump right into the risk management policy. And if you guys have questions, I don't care if you unmute yourself and ask. Anything is fair game. Anything about Delta Sig, being a lawyer, risk management, we'll cover it all. I think I'm talking for about 60 minutes. So buckle in and sit tight. So the first thing I'm going to share with you, I believe, is the actual risk management policy. Let me see if I can get that up. So Delta Sigma Pi has bylaws, we have policies, we have procedures, and these are all the governing documents. And what I'm showing you on the screen now is the actual Delta Sigma Pi risk management policy. And there's a lot of people out there that say our risk management policy is way too strict. For example, why do we have a bar for scavenger hunts across the board? And it does have that criticism a lot. But there's a really good reason, really good financial and legal reason. First, it makes sense. If you follow it, you're less likely to get hurt or in trouble. But the real reason is financial. We have an insurance policy that covers you as long as you're acting within the risk management policy. In other words, you're following the rules. Someone gets hurt, someone dies, property damage, you're going to be covered by the fraternity's policy, except if you're not following this risk management policy, then you're on your own and you're going to be excluded. So the best reason I can think of is the financial reason. And if there's any double Greeks out there that are in social organizations, social Greek organizations, they will tell you their insurance premiums are so much higher than what we have to pay. And that's simply because we have the risk management policy that we do. So I'm going to whip through it real quick, and then eventually we're going to talk about some legal concepts, and then I'm going to give you some examples of what actually is happening out there in hazing. And we know this just, by looking up newspapers and the internet and seeing what people are getting in trouble for. So we'll cover some of that as well. Policy 1, alcohol, drugs, fraternity events. Alcohol is prevalent in society. If you go to Delta Sigma Pi events, you're going to see alcohol. There's 2 ways that we can, a collegiate chapter can have alcohol at an event. First, let me show you, it's our policy number C here. The best way is through a licensed, insured bartender. Licensed and insured, because if something goes wrong, the liability gets shifted from you as the chapter to the one with the insurance policy. So that's the ultimate safest way to do it. The other way is we do allow BYOB. That's often abused. That means you don't share alcohol, and you should have safeguards in place. Most people that get in trouble are doing the BYOB system. And a lot of disciplinary issues in Delta Sigma Pi deal with, for example, providing alcohol to maybe people who aren't 21. Some other common sense things. There is no bulk alcohol. You can't make Delta Sig punch, which when I was in college, we filled up a bathtub with a bunch of weird stuff. Policy E, you cannot use chapter funds or pooled money to purchase alcohol. This is like black and white rules here. There are exceptions for alumni because alumni are much more responsible. I say that with great sarcasm, but there are different rules for alumni chapters. Delta Sigma Pi cannot co-host an event unless if there's any alcohol. So that's just, we're not going to have that kind of exposure. Getting into some of the more interesting, if there's alcohol, it cannot be an open party. You cannot have a bartender or BYOB at an open Delta Sig party. No alcohol at collegiate or provincial or national events like ceremonies, initiations, not provincials. There's lots of alcohol there, but actually in the ritual that we have, the pledge meetings, the ceremonies, banned from alcohol and illegal substances. Marijuana, THC is interesting in Florida because it's legal for some people if you have a prescription for it. But right now, Delta Sigma Pi takes the view that because THC is federally illegal, they're sticking with that policy. And so even if you have a license or you're in a state where it's legal recreationally, like if you go to Vegas, you still can't do it at a fraternity event at the moment. Whether or not that changes in the future, we'll see. We don't do games with alcohol. Anything that promotes rapid consumption, no, not going to do it. We don't have any events outside of US and Canada unless it's approved by a foreign alumni chapter. I think the only foreign alumni chapter we have right now is in England. And it's, if you ever go to England, you can go to a alumni event over there. So let's talk about the more interesting stuff. Hazing, right? Hazing is a very subjective thing. Hazing is the intentional, knowing, or reckless act committed by a person, whether individually or in concert with others, for the purpose of recruiting, joining, pledging, initiating, admitting. And it is dealing with being coerced to break the law or Delta Sigma Pi policy, for example, on alcohol. Being coerced to consume any food, liquid, alcohol, drug, or any substance. So you can't force people to consume. Endure brutality of physical or mental nature, or endure any activity which adversely affects the health and safety of an individual. That's a tough one, because as we go around society, we don't know other people's limitations. Some people are more fragile than others just because of health issues or maybe even social issues. Hazing is not an objective standard, it's subjective. It's not what you think is hazing, it's what the person is experiencing. Delta Sigma Pi has a zero tolerance on hazing. I will share with you 28 years ago, when I was the president of the Beta Omega chapter, which is the University of Miami, we were suspended for hazing, and we probably deserved it. We were trying to clean up the program, but one of our pledges reported us, and because we had such a poor history, we didn't even get to respond to central office, and they just suspended us for 30 days. That kind of killed us, and it killed me because I was the president of the chapter, and when you're suspended, you cannot have a single activity during that time. So it kind of killed my year as president. And it was also a moment for me as to whether or not I was going to stay involved with this organization, because you can imagine, at the time I was 20 something years old, kind of rebellious and pissed off that as president, we were just suspended. And I could have very easily walked away from Delta Sigma Pi at that point. To save our charter, our provincial vice president and grand president summoned me to a provincial event. I had to go to another state, and our chapter never went to these things because we were kind of like, the chapter that didn't follow all these rules. And they basically challenged me at that meeting that I was the only one from my chapter that went. And the challenge was you got to get involved in a national level, and you got to cut out the silliness. And that's where I discovered really Delta Sigma Pi was so much bigger than just my collegiate chapter, and all of the other benefits that potentially exist by meeting people that are like-minded but different and totally across the country. I have friends in every part of the country, every part of the world practically, that I can call when I need something. And most Delta Sigs, if you notice, are pretty type A personalities. They're usually pretty good at whatever it is they decide to do. Why else would you join Delta Sigma Pi if you didn't want to be the best at something? So going on to discrimination, we don't discriminate against pretty much everything, including sexual orientation, race, ethnicity. We don't hurt our people. We have a whole section on sexual misconduct that kind of mimics the professional workplace. There no harassment, no hostile work environments, no violence. Now we have to deal with stalking because some people are kind of getting out of control, and certainly no exploitation. Chapter houses and meeting facilities, not really an issue because Delta Sigma Pi doesn't have any houses right now. We used to, but no more. We have a retaliation policy. If you report something, there cannot be retaliation. And of course, Delta Sigma Pi will maintain this policy on their website. I downloaded it a couple hours ago just so I would have the most recent copy. Actually, I think I did it a couple days ago and emailed it to everybody so you would have it. So maybe you have a copy of this. If not, it could be shared with you pretty easily. So that's the main policy. And there's another document that exists that is like a kind of a Q&A that the fraternity put out to give more information. So let's take a look at that real quick. Here we go. This is called our Informational Document, and all of this stuff is found on dsp.org or deltasigmapi.org. So risk management applies to organizational members, and there's a definition. An organization member is everybody: employees, members, pledges. If we are starting a new chapter, it's called a colony. It applies to everybody. It applies at fraternity events. So this doesn't prevent John, Joe, and Billy from renting a house and having fun. But if you do have a fraternity event, it is going to have to follow the rules of risk management. And what is a fraternity event? We can debate about that for a really long time, but eventually how it gets decided is in a court of law, and attorneys present information, and a group of 12 or 8 people that you've never met before, and they may be high IQ, they may be low IQ, they are the ones determining what a fraternity event is. I'll give you some hints. If it's on your calendar of events, it's probably a fraternity event. If it's announced at a meeting, it's probably a fraternity event. Like if you say, we're all going to go to Joe's house after this, you've just made it a fraternity event if that announcement was made at an official chapter meeting. If you have listservs or social media and you announce it, I think that's fair game as well. What if everybody's wearing letters? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. It's up to the jury, you know. But these are some things that you should be thinking about. And the people who get in trouble when there is trouble, you know, could be everybody, but it's usually the people who have a special duty to the fraternity. For example, the president, the senior VP who's in charge of recruitment, the pledge educator. If you're a big brother, you have a special duty. You have a duty to make sure these people stay out of harm's way. You have that duty in life too, not just in Delta Sigma Pi. You have a duty to act in a way that doesn't hurt someone recklessly. For example, if you take a chainsaw and you turn it on and you start swinging it over your head, someone can assume that someone's going to get hurt from that behavior. And if you're going down the street and you hurt people because of your negligent behavior, you're going to be responsible not only for the injuries, but probably for the pain and suffering as well. So that's not a fraternity thing. That's just basic life. And right now it's hard to kind of appreciate, because when I was in college, I didn't have much stuff. You know, I had my funds from my school that I was given and I had to parse it out, but you know, I didn't have my own vehicle. I didn't have my own 401k. I didn't have my own pension. Now I got a lot of stuff, and I don't want someone to sue me and take that stuff away. But that's what happens in civil court. You do something wrong, they can take your stuff away. They can literally come to your house and take your stuff away if they get a judgment against you. I'm not going to hit all of this stuff because it's kind of dry. Sorry. Get into some of the good stuff here. Question 8. I want to hold a party for fellow Delta Sigs on my own at my own home. Would this be a fraternity event? Answer. I don't know. It depends. It depends on a lot of stuff. And we're going to talk about your duty if you have a party at your house and it's not Deltasig, because guess what? If you're serving alcohol and one of your guests goes out and runs someone over or runs over a fence, you could be responsible for that in Florida. And we'll talk about that before this is over. Drinking games are prohibited just because there's so much, tendency to abuse it. Let's get to the good stuff. What about if someone says, I'm going to take all of your keys and not give it back to you until you're sober? Show of hands, how many people think that is a good idea if someone does that? How many people think it's a bad idea? Just to see if you're listening. So I only saw a couple of hands. Most people think it's a bad idea. Cool. And some people aren't listening. That's okay. I won't hold it against you. It's a horrible idea because you are taking the duty of deciding who's capable of driving and what gives you that power. What if you're wrong? If you're wrong, you're going to be responsible. So those type of things, why they seem good intentioned, are horrible. Let's talk about the example for no scavenger hunts. This actually happened in Tampa, kind of close to you. There was a scavenger hunt about 19 years ago by a social sorority. One of the items was a stop sign. And someone grabbed a stop sign, and that led to an automobile accident that was a fatality. So someone died because the stop sign was removed. Again, that wasn't a Deltasig issue, but the potential of abuse is just so strong. So Delta Sigma Pi errs on the side of caution, and they don't, they just across the board said, we're not doing this. If you're an alumni chapter, you get a little bit more latitude. You don't have to worry about that now. We have this great thing called the Leadership Foundation. And I used to be the president and chair of it during our 100th anniversary. It was a lot of fun. And we raised a whole bunch of money. And we started a scholarship, my wife and I, to pay for you to go to Congress and to pay for you to go to provincial conferences. And what that means is if you send your chapter to delegates and they stay, you got to stay. If you take off, you don't get it. But we send you a check, and that check right now is the income of the fund, and I think we have about $36,000 in this fund. So everybody in the South Atlantic region that sends people to either Congress or their provincial conference, which is what happens in the spring, gets a couple $100 reimbursed, because that's what we thought was important. We thought it was important to get students to these educational opportunities because if you know Melissa Garcia there, she is one of our CDL. She's our certified Deltasig leader, and she speaks at these events. And you get all kinds of really talented, diverse people to hear from. And you might not like everything I have to say, but one or two things may resonate. And you take the stuff that you like and you build your professional persona from all of these different influences. You're not going to mimic anybody because mimicking doesn't work. You have to find your own stride, whatever that means. And you find that by figuring out what works for other people and implementing it in your own routine. It's either going to work for you or you're going to discard it. And that's what life is about, going through these experiences and gathering the things that work for you, because we're all different, and trying to minimize the things that don't. I have all kinds of flaws. I just try to use my flaws and turn them into things that benefit me. And that's kind of a higher level of managing your energy. For example, if you get really nervous before you speak, you can actually transform that energy into making it a really good speech. That's not the purpose of this discussion, but that is the purpose why we do so much training. That's the purpose why we recreated our scholarship. Most scholarships are academic and they're to help you pay for school. We thought getting you to these events would be kind of more interesting. We have specific hazing laws. We'll talk about the Florida one soon, but if there's not a hazing law, there's typically a criminal law that covers when you're doing something bad. Like if you give someone under 21 alcohol, there's a crime for that. If you batter someone, there's a crime for that. I want to say this may be a little gross, but this goes back to the forced consumption of food. When you consume alcohol through your mouth, if you consume too much of it, your body typically reacts and rejects it. There is a new fad where people are imbibing alcohol through their butt. And it absorbs into your blood immediately. But it's hard for me to even imagine this, but it's happened so many times in the press that I got to talk about it. You have no way of regulating your alcoholic intake in that method of consumption. And a lot of people get hurt because if you took a massive amount of alcohol orally, you would just puke, likely. That doesn't happen in the other way. And I hate to be gross, but the only reason I'm saying it is it's been in the news lately, and it's horribly dangerous and horribly embarrassing to talk about. So I apologize. How strongly is the risk management policy enforced? I can tell you from personal experience, it's enforced. And the more trouble your chapter has been in the past, the worse the punishment will be. So anybody got questions about that stuff so far? Alcohol. We're going to get into more specific examples of hazing, but just based on the concepts. Does anybody have questions? Feel free to either raise your hand or speak up, or I'm just going to keep going because I see everybody staring at me. And if you don't have your image off, what are you guys doing? Let me see you. This is a professional event. You shouldn't. I feel like you're napping. Carter, you got a question? I saw you waving your hand. Or were you just saying hi? I got it. Thumbs up. Cool. See, I'm watching you. I'm watching all of you. All right. What are we going to talk about next? No questions. No problem. Let's talk about some really fun, not fun, but real life examples. Let me show you a different screen. Here we go. So, yay. Delta Iota. Did I get that right? Florida Southern? I think so. Oh, I got the year wrong. There we go. I knew I always have one typo. So if you ever want to contact me, I have a website because I'm a lawyer. I'm also pretty active on Facebook. I'd love to keep up with you guys and see what you're doing. I also have an email. There you go. estevens@warddamon.com. That's the firm that I own with some other folks. There's my phone number. The cool thing about being a Deltasig is you have a really big Rolodex. If you don't know what a Rolodex is, it's an old-fashioned term for a phone book. And even if you didn't know me, even if you weren't here at this presentation, I take calls from people all the time from all over the country about getting into law school. They got in trouble. How do they get out of it? That's what we do. We help each other. Even though the thing I like about being in a professional fraternity as opposed to a social fraternity or a sorority, usually when you look at a social fraternity, everybody looks the same. When you look at Delta Sigs, there's an incredible diversity. So I think that diversity is amazing. And the purple and gold string that holds us together, those are our core beliefs that we, that's the purpose of Delta Sigma Pi, that we want to go out there and be the best professionals that we can. And we don't all have to look alike, because the world does not look alike. And the more you get to meet people that are not like you, the more you're going to understand humanity. So here are some actual news items pulled from the press. There hasn't been much in hazing for the past year. Amazingly, there's correlations like child support or child abuse is not being reported because kids aren't going to school. And usually that's where child abuse is found. So as a family lawyer right now, there's very little child abuse being reported. Does that mean it stopped? Personally, I think it's probably gone up because people are going crazy in this pandemic and they're acting in ways that are frustrating to them because of our particular circumstances. So this first headline is about banning hard alcohol in fraternity, specifically at Penn State. Penn State, something really bad happened in 2017 that we're going to talk about that kind of changed the face of fraternities. Here it is right here. Look at this guy in this picture. Now, the guy on the right kind of looks like me, good looking attorney, right? But the guy on the left is a student at Penn State, and he was the first one to get in criminal trouble for the death of a young man named Timothy Piazza. Timothy was a 19-year-old pledge at Penn State and consumed a whole bunch of alcohol, had a Bach blood alcohol content level of 0.28. So 0.08 is legal, is the threshold of being drunk in Florida. So he was like triple that. 19-year-old kid fell down stairs, smashed his head on the railing. The recruiter, the rush, they call him the rush chair in social fraternities, propped Timothy up on the bed. 12 hours later, 12 hours, they called an ambulance because he was not responsive. He died of massive head trauma because he fell and he hit the railing. Out of this incident, this is the first guy that was charged. He was put, I think, on 3 months of house arrest, which is not a horrible sanction. If seeing someone died, but he's no longer in school, because if you're in trouble for hazing, you also have scholastic punishment. And at the very least, you're going to lose any financial aid that you have if you ever get this kind of discipline in school or in the criminal system. In addition to this particular person, Mr. Burke, there's 25 other people facing criminal charges because of this particular death. Really sad story. The people were Googling what to do with someone with blue lips. No one called an ambulance. This kid could have been saved if one person did something. This shut down all fraternities and all Greek life at Penn State for about 6 months. No one was allowed to do anything. They just shut everything down. So now we're going to go to some other examples. In Louisiana State, normally we have about 1 hazing death a year. For some reason in 2017, we had 4. So we've been getting a lot more attention in the Greek world lately because the death rate has risen so dramatically. In Louisiana State, this is just talking about that rate. Let me go on to the next one. These pictures are they hurt. This is the head of Penn State shaking the hand of Timothy's mother after they passed some legislation in Pennsylvania about hazing to make the laws a little stricter. But no one should have to be dealing with that kind of situation. So here are the specifics about the Penn State student death dealing with Timothy. Here's some stuff that we know for sure. He died due to injuries sustained Beta Theta Pi fraternity house after he fell down a flight of stairs. He had multiple traumatic injuries from the fall. It was ruled accidental, meaning no one pushed it, no one was at fault, but this guy was so intoxicated that falling down the stairs is not a surprising issue. No one in the fraternity called the police for 12 hours. I just don't get that. Not one person. It didn't have to be the rush chair. We call them VP, senior VP, and we call it recruiting. It could have been anybody. It just took one person to save this kid, and no one did it. But they did have cameras everywhere, so the entire incident was recorded. Like I said, there's 26 people that are facing criminal charges. The chapter, of course, was suspended. The internal IFC banned all fraternities, like I said, for a while, and then they cut out hard liquor in its totality. And it shows that, this is so depressing. It shows that there's going to be a very zero tolerance policy, and it's not just coming from schools, it's coming from prosecutors. So this is a picture of Timothy here when he was in high school playing football. So there was all kinds of articles about this just because of the extreme nature that 12 hours went by and nobody called. 12 hours. Some other stuff. The University of Albany, some kids got in trouble. No deaths this time, but their names are forever in the press. They have mug shots that will follow them for the rest of their lives. If you've ever been arrested, hopefully none of you have, but there is a website, or there used to be a website called mugshots.com that they would publish your mugshot, and you'd have to pay them to get it off. Ironically, the guy who ran that website went to jail for extortion. Going back to Albany, this was people being forced to eat mud and garbage, and they were pouring foul-smelling liquids onto women. They got arrested. So now we're going to the University of Townsend University here, and this was, I show the booking photos because, you know, these people look like us, right? This looks like anybody in our chapter, but maybe, you know, after a night of sleeping in jail, but, you know, these are the people that we go to school with. They just made horrible decisions, or someone wasn't there to say no. So in Townsend University, we had an issue where someone was forced to drink something that burned their esophagus, literally burned their esophagus. So these folks got in all kinds of trouble for that. In February of 16 at Buffalo State College, someone involved in a fraternity event got sick and required immediate surgery, and he died on the table, a 21-year-old kid. They say this is related to hazing because he was forced to drink some kind of unidentified toxic cocktail. And while you may not, you might be able to handle your liquor and do all kinds of shots, we're all different. And there's this concept called the fragile eggshell. You never know someone's true health issues where, you know, if you touch their head, that could give them brain damage because, you know, they have an issue with their skull. You don't know what's wrong with people. And just because you can do something. Don't assume, people that look healthy are the same way, because, some people may be allergic to alcohol. Everybody's different. So going back to high school, this was a lot of fun. This was 4 high schoolers were arrested, and some of them were 18, and it was a felony. So if you get charged with a felony, that has a serious impact on the rest of your life. It's very hard to get a job as a felon, very hard to vote as a felon. You don't get to own guns as a felon. There's all kinds of horrible consequences. Let's go down to Radford. Our old miss, which was first, Radford, 4 arrested, 5 kids spent 5 days in the hospital. We're not sure why. And they arrested 4 people. Old Miss, they arrested 5. Again, look at these kids. They look like they could be Deltasigs, right? They're all good-looking young men. But these 5 were arrested because their pledge ended up with a concussion, broken teeth, and a ruptured eardrum. And I think they all got some felonies too. Crazy stuff, but this really happens. University of Alabama, last one, second to last one we're going to talk about. Again, they're just showing there's a no tolerance issue at these schools. Now, a lot of this became a lot more serious about 6 or 7 years ago. And I don't know if you're familiar with, is it Florida AMU? They are Florida Agricultural. They have a really good band, FAMU. I think it's FAMU. And they actually hazed the band. And one of the band members died in a bus. He was basically beaten up. And this was the first time ever that prosecutors charged the school administrator with a crime. The school administrator was not there. He wasn't on the bus. He didn't lay a finger on this man that passed away, but he created an environment where it happened. This scared the heck out of everybody that was involved in school administrations, because they could be personally, criminally responsible for stuff that is happening at their school. Before that moment, a lot of people turned a blind eye, and it was very frustrating because we would lose a lot of youth due to alcohol hazing. And when that school administrator got charged, eventually he wasn't found guilty of anything, but it was just the fact that he had to lawyer up and had this criminal exposure scared most schools into a total no tolerance policy whatsoever. So that's kind of the political environment that we are in right now. I will tell you, I was hazed as a Delta Sig back in 1991. There are pros to hazing. Some people say it builds loyalty, or it creates bonds. But again, the things that can go wrong are just so significant that even though there may be benefits to it, it's just not accepted in our society at all. So, govern yourself accordingly. If you happen to be a pledge, all you have to do is, if something's happening to you that you're uncomfortable with, if you call central office, I promise you it will not be ignored. But there's also, you have a district director, you have a regional vice president, you have a provincial vice president, and of course you can call central office directly. I think their number is 513-503-513-1907. I don't know if that, I may be right. maybe. Delta Sigma Pi is a professional fraternity organized to foster a study of business in universities and college. I almost got it. It's been 30 years, sorry. All right, let's talk about something fun again. Host liquor liability. It's the funnest thing I can think of right now. This is important because if you have a party, and this isn't Delta Sig stuff, this is just adult stuff. If you have a party, you could be responsible for the damages that someone does. Sounds crazy, right? But Florida has a specific statute, and it says that a person who sells or furnishes, so that could be at your house, right? Or furnishes beverages to a person of lawful drinking age is not liable. You got to read this stuff carefully because lawyers wrote it. Is not liable for injury or damage. So if someone is drunk and they leave your house, they leave your party, and they cause an injury or death or damage, those are the instances we're talking about. Or so if you give a minor alcohol, you can be responsible. Or if you're in the business of selling alcoholic beverages, if you knowingly serve a person habitually addicted to the use of any or all alcoholic beverages. Again, I don't know what that means, habitually addicted. Neither do you. It's going to be determined by a jury after the fact. And when we come up with rules, sometimes people are kind of like cute and we figure out ways to technically get around these rules. Those don't work because when you're in front of a jury, if you're being a smarty pants, I guarantee it will backfire. So being cute and trying to find that exception to the rule usually gets you in more trouble. I put other states host liquor liability because I give the speech a lot, and every state has a different rule. So, depending on where you live, you probably want to know what your state's host liquor liability law is. And, if you didn't know you had a responsibility, if you were serving drinks at your house, you do. This is called adulting. Here's our Florida hazing statute. It's a third-degree felony, again, or it could be a first-degree misdemeanor, depending on what happens. It's a felony if it results in serious bodily injury or death. It is a misdemeanor. Misdemeanor, you can still go to jail for a year if it's just an intentional or reckless act of hazing. So it doesn't even have to be intentional. You could be just doing it recklessly and still get in trouble. And again, if you get in trouble, you're going to get in trouble with the law, the criminal trouble, academic trouble, and, financial aid. Your financial aid is usually the first to go. That's pretty much all the material I have on risk management. I would love to take some questions in the couple minutes I have left, because you all have been watching me with these eyes so attentively, which I appreciate. And it doesn't have to be about this. Reagan, you got something?
Hi, okay, so I'm going to try to think how to word this correctly. This is like a personal-ish question. So I'm also, I'm a potential brother, and I'm looking at also going into law. How has Delta Sig helped you in your law career?
It helped me become a professional because it gave me speaking opportunities. And it also helped me deal with difficult people. When you run a fraternity, you have to build a consensus, and building a consensus is a very important skill set. And you can either learn that when you're going out to work, or you can learn that in the Delta Sigma Pi environment. And I just got a note from Alex saying I'm pretty much out of time. So it was nice meeting you all. If you want to find me on social media, EDDIESTEPHENS. I'm really easy to find because I'm a lawyer. And if you ever have a problem or an issue in life that I can help with, because we're all brothers, I am more than happy to be of assistance to you. So good luck in your career. And I hope our paths actually cross one day and this pandemic is over, we can all say hi to each other in person.
Thank you.
Thanks for speaking with us.
Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.